Good evening, everyone. We'd like to call tonight's meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. President, before we start, we do have one recognition. January is School Board Director Month, a recognition that honors school board members for their commitment to providing quality public education for Pennsylvania's school children. The Colonial School District, community, and administration would like to recognize and thank our school board members who volunteer their time and offer generous service to our students. I have an official proclamation from PSBA that is quite lengthy and certainly well-deserved, but we thought it would be best if our students, rather than reading a formal proclamation, we thought it best to give you a more informal and intimate thank you from our students.
Because of you, I learned how to divide things in half.
Because of you, I get to learn lots of cool things about William Penn.
Because of you, I get to write fun and great stories.
Because of you, I can learn about ways to sustain resources for our future.
Because of you, I can learn air in science class.
Because of you, I learned how to value educational content over my grades with the growth mindset.
Because of you, I learned how to read better than when I first moved here. Because of you, I learned how to write code and program robots. Because of you, I get to learn music. Because of you, I learned subtraction and new different equations.
Because of you, I learned how to combine multiple styles of writing in my investigative journalism.
Because of you, I got to learn how to do multiplication.
Because of you, I learned how to become a good author and illustrator when I want to write my own books.
Thank you, Felix Raimondo.
Thank you, Leslie Feingold. Thank you, Mel Brodsky.
Thank you, Jennifer Dow.
Thank you, Eunice Franklin Becker. Thank you, Susan Moore. Thank you, Rosemary Northcutt.
Thank you, Kathy Peduzzi.
Thank you, Adam Shupak.
Thank a school board member today.
Well, thank you. That was very nice. And I'd like to just take a moment to share some highlights of the past month. And on that positive note, we had, on December 6th, Governor Tom Wolf chose our middle school to announce his initiative for reducing testing requirements for the PSSAs. Following the press conference, the Governor Wolf hung out with our students and got the taste of our school district's STEAM initiatives. And at the 12 stations set up in the library, students showed the Governor what was available in library makerspace, including virtual reality, 3D printing, robotics, one-button video studio, and even how to install an electrical outlet. The students did an amazing job. It was truly very impressive. The event was a great showcase for our students and teachers. And as one of the board members, all the board members there, it was a very nice event, and I wanted to take the time to acknowledge that. Also, I wanted to say thank you to Terry Yam and the facilities team for doing an incredible job during our recent weather events. They've done a great job with keeping the schools open and safe, and we had a recent water main break, and they really did an amazing job. Also, I'd like to note Dr. Christian for his diligence in keeping our students safe by making the right call, and whether it's a late arrival or early dismissal or a school closing, his methodical approach and a safety-first mindset is greatly appreciated. And I know he's a baseball fan, so keep on throwing that perfect game. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge the board members for their hard work in the past several weeks. We've been very busy with multiple committee meetings and events, and everyone has done a wonderful job. And I truly would like to say thank you for their time, effort, and dedication. So, on those notes, we'll go right into executive session announcements. I'd like to announce that the board met in executive session on December 13th and December 18th to interview respondents to the RFP for solicitor services. The board also met in executive session on January 10th to discuss personnel, specifically a grievance settlement and extracurricular positions. We also met in executive session this evening to review the evening's personnel report and confidential settlement agreement. So we're going to go through next item of business is the approval of the minutes. So we have the minutes from our general session from 11/16/17, reorganization meeting from 12/4/17, curriculum committee meeting on 11/13 and 12/11 from 2017, FMT committee meeting from November 16th, 2017, human resources meeting, committee meeting on January 10th, 2018, and the finance committee meeting on January 10th, 2018. And you can find them in closures 1, 2, 3, 4, 35, and 36. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Do I hear a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, financial reports. So we have the following financial reports that are up for approval, and they include budget transfers, general fund federal program bills, capital reserve fund, food service bills, cafeteria report, outstanding investment report, cash flow summary, comparison of taxes collected, real estate tax escrow report, trust fund, reconciliation of cash accounts, budgetary deficit status report, and the bond fund. Is there a motion to accept those financial reports? Your motion, do I hear a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes? Ayes have it. Treasurer's report for November and December 2017. That's enclosure 16. I hear a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Do you hear a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes? Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, in this portion of the meeting, we open it up to public comments on the agenda. And I'd like to take this opportunity for anybody to have a point they want to talk about on the agenda.
Thank you for the opportunity. Excuse me. My name's Brian Daly. I've lived in Plymouth Township for going on 25 years. And I was glad to see on tonight's agenda that January is School Director Recognition Month. I'd like to second what the children said and take this opportunity to recognize all members of our school board for their dedication and service to the community and our children. As I said the last time I spoke at a meeting, I had 3 children who were continuously in the Colonial schools from 1993 through 2008, and I know the board always did right by them, and they got a good education, so keep up the good work. I'd also like to recognize the 4 new members of the board, commend them for seeking office, and congratulate them on their election. I know Jennifer Dow particularly well, and I'm pleased that such a dedicated citizen and passionate advocate for children has joined the board. I also see that tonight's meeting is going to have consideration and deliberation of the results of the recent request for proposal for general solicitor services. I recall that there was some concern about the RFP in a December board meeting, and I'd just like to observe that I know from business experience that an RFP is a standard and effective way for an organization to solicit creative ideas and potentially get new levels of service. I'm confident that the board is going to deliberate carefully and in the best interest of the community. Thank you.
Good evening. I also am here on behalf of the School Board Appreciation Month. I'm Karen Schrader. I've lived in the district for almost 40 years. Both of my children attended district schools very successfully, and I appreciate that from all of you. And I'd like to thank you all for making the commitment to be on the school board. It's a volunteer position, frequently very unrewarding, and I appreciate that your effort and your commitment to do that. It's also very important responsibility. You're the ones who must balance the needs of the community with the needs of our students and faculty and staff, all the while taking into account that we have a history and tradition of excellence and very high standards within our district. I do know some of you more personally because we work together on community activities, and I feel that the district is in very good and secure hands with the continuation of our good leadership. But I do hope that all of you, I was at the December meeting also, I do hope that all of you can coalesce into a productive, cooperative board, respecting differing opinions and striving for the excellence that we've all come to expect and deserve, and also protecting the community resources. I commend each of you for your personal commitment. I know that you all have personal hardships in order to be able to do this work, and I appreciate that. But I do believe that with Dr. Christian as our leader at the district and with you as our new board, that we're in very good hands and we have a wonderful team. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Petruno. I have 2 children that that go to our schools. I'm a very active member at Ridge Park's PTO. And I guess I'm here tonight because I wasn't at the meeting in December, but I watched the broadcast of it, and it really raised a lot of concerns for me. After watching it, I sent an email out to our new school board, and really my questions weren't answered. I know, being on the PTO board at Ridge Park, that transparency, honesty, being as open and forthcoming is the way we've been able to build trust and the way we've been able to get parental support and do the types of things we do for our kids to make sure that Ridge Park is the best that it can be for our students and our teachers. And I think that my hope is that this school board and tonight's meeting is going to be very different than what we saw back in December, that questions are going to be answered and things are going to be explained, because you all might have great knowledge of how things are done, but we don't. And to not have questions answered is really hard. And then when people reach out via email to get more information, to gain more knowledge, and not really to have those answered, raises questions. Is something being hidden? What's not being said? You know, this appointing a new solicitor, it seems like it is top priority. I believe our current solicitor's position isn't up until this summer. I guess my first question would be, what's the rush? Why was the need for the amendment to the agenda back in December made? Why was the rush to do interviews, you know, less than a week later? You know, what is prompting this? And I guess I'd also like to know, with the interviews already having taken place, what were the qualifications you were looking for in a new person? Were you looking just for a lower price point? Were you looking to something our current solicitor had done that people didn't like? The people that work closely with him, you know, Dr. Christian, other people, were they brought into the interviews? Do they have a say in what's going on? There's been a lot of talk that there's some type of hidden agenda here, which I would really hope is not the case. But being that there hasn't been any straightforward answers being given to anyone makes people wonder, and makes me wonder what's going on. I also want to know, you know, what the qualifications are, what we're looking for, what will happen if there's a conflict of interest. I know some of the people that were interviewed work in Conshohocken, Plymouth Township. What's going to happen if the school district needs to do some type of business with them? Who's going to represent who under those circumstances? And then I guess one of the big things that, you know, has been floating around out there is this talk of money and how much money was given to certain campaigns by certain people. And I would just really, really hope that that can be addressed and that people can be assured that, you know, politics and financial contributions have nothing to do with our school board, because we are a great school district, we represent great families and great kids, and to start going down that road is a slippery slope and just something that I hope you're all above. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Epstein, and I've been a parent in this district for 19 years. And I'm asking, my comments are with respect to item M under new business. I'm asking the board to choose an educational solicitor for our school district that is based solely on qualifications. I've heard rumors about this choice being about following the money and campaign contributions. I'm not going to go there right now. Instead, I'm going to ask that each board member vote using the same strict guidelines that our own administration uses when hiring for positions within our schools. We currently, as a district, have positions that are open and have been open and are challenging to fill, not because those candidates are not qualified to fulfill the actual duties, but because the candidate may not have every box checked as to what the district standards are. They may be missing a specific certification. They may not have experience in a particular area that they're looking for. So these positions are still open. Education law is very specific. Just like you wouldn't want your family doctor performing your brain surgery, you don't want a lawyer who doesn't have impeccable qualifications to advise our administration. I understand that the district does not have to go with the lowest bidder when it comes to services. So that being said, I have done some research on the candidates that responded to this RFP, and the research has actually come from the respondents themselves with respect to published information. Our current solicitor, Jeff Sultanic, is extremely qualified. I'm not going to go on and on about his qualifications. I personally didn't even know Mr. Sultanic. I've never even really seen him until just now, actually. His firm, Fox Rothschild, has provided legal services to more than 90 school entities throughout Pennsylvania. 90, okay? He's also testified before Senate committees, and I could go on and on, but that's not my point. Sweet Stevens et al. Only practices educational law. Again, educational law is very specific. Whistler Pearlstein has 14 lawyers dedicated to their educational law team and services 10 public school districts in Pennsylvania. Sean Kilkenny has experience in municipal law, land use and zoning, and real estate law. No educational law experience. He's partnered with Michelle Bartle Dooley, who represent Upper Merion and Bristol. Although Michael Clark with Rudolph Clark represents Norristown, Pennsbury, and Upper Perkiomen school districts, according to his own biography on his own company's website, his experience prior to joining Rudolph Clark was specializing in personal injury cases and business litigation, not educational law. I am asking that the board choose a solicitor that meets district standards, our district standards and level of expertise that our district not only deserves, but has been accustomed to during the past 19 years that I've been in the district. I am looking out for the best interest of our children in this fine school district, not the best interest of the individual board members or a specific political party. I also ask that we have this transparency that we have had over the last 19 years. It's not being shown. It's still not being shown. And a lot of us are very disgusted with that. So I'm asking for that from this board. The kids expressed their thanks in the video. Please act accordingly so that we can thank you for this decision as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the perspective that's based on so much research. It's very impressive. I just wanted to say, certainly can't speak for the board, but there was concern expressed about perhaps being peremptory or preemptive in looking at hiring another solicitor. It seems to be common practice in civic government here when there is a reorganization to consider the replacement of solicitors. I know the Plymouth Council took on a new solicitor, and so did the zoning board in that township, of which I'm a recently appointed member. So I don't think it's anything really to worry about in terms of not being standard operating procedure, because it looks like there's something that, you know, from casual observation that the governmental bodies do here, for what that's worth.
Hello. My name is Robert Sassy. I live at 633 Turf Lane in Conshohocken, Plymouth Township. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. I've spent the majority of my life in this district. I'm a product of this school district, having gone to Lafayette Consolidated. But not many people in this room know what that is, but first grade at Lafayette Consolidated, second grade at White Marsh Elementary through sixth. My seventh grade year was the first year that they closed White Marsh Junior High and created Plymouth Junior, or Colonial Middle School. I still call it Plymouth Junior High. So my brothers went to this high school. My parents were the first graduating class of this high school, 1956. My nieces graduated and are currently students at this high school. So I'm very well versed with Colonial School District. Last month, I was very disappointed. Not because of, whatever you guys decide to do with the solicitor, that's on you. I mean, this is what we elect board members to handle. But I was surprised and somewhat disappointed with the name calling. As much as I like Ms. Peduzzi personally, I was very surprised that she referred to the new council members as puppets. I thought that was inappropriate. I think if I would have done that, people would have come down on me pretty hard for that. And I think that's not the right example we should set for the kids, especially in this day and age. Many of you, some of you may know, I'm the constable in Plymouth Township. I've been in Judge Lucan's court, Judge Bernhardt's court. I've been involved in some truancy cases. I've been involved in some cases that involved activity in Colonial School District, so I see what's going on. And I think we need to be sensitive and careful about the example we set. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Congratulations to the new members. And please, for the sake of the taxpayers and the kids, most important, try to work together and try to continue to make this district a great district, which it is. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erin Salino. I am a lifelong resident of Lafayette Hill and now Plymouth Meeting. I went to PW a very long time ago, and I want to say I've actually been very remiss. I have not been to a board meeting since I was a senior in high school. So I'm sorry, that's on me. After watching the board meeting from December on CITV, I realized that that's not acceptable. More people, and as you can see, there's a lot of people here, we were pretty appalled at what happened. It's not right. So I understand that there was undercurrents, and Beth Petruno did a great job of explaining a lot of our concerns. But I want all of you to understand that it's just not one or two people, it's a lot of people. And you have a great responsibility, as they showed in that video. We're entrusting you with our children's education. I have a third grader, and I'll have a first grader next year at Plymouth. And my husband and I purposely chose to stay in the district because I want them to have a great education. And after last week, it gave me pause. It didn't show to me, personally, that my children's education was at the forefront of your discussions last week. So I want you to think about that, because that's why you're here. So I also reached out to a couple board members. I reached out to Dave Sherman. I read the agreement between the solicitor's office, his law firm. It's like a retention agreement. So the things I took from it is in the last meeting where there was absolutely no reasoning or explanations given for this new RFP to be put out so quickly. But I read through the agreement, and I got to tell you that financially, it doesn't make sense. His rates were incredibly economical as a partner in a law firm. I think it was $180 per hour. above and beyond the $23,000 that it would be for the year to attend all of these meetings, and that's cheap. And I've also looked at the articles that were written about the experience of the current solicitor, and as the other speaker had mentioned, the other law firms. And unless you can truly give us a really good reason or some sort of transparency, there's no really good reason for doing all of this. And it's somewhat disrespectful to the taxpayers to have to go through that and do this research and still not get an answer. He's incredibly qualified. His law firm, as others have said, represent numerous school districts in the area. And honestly, you want somebody who has that experience, who has that kind of experience in Harrisburg, who has experience in the courts and knows our system, and to just move past that without giving some sort of explanation, it's just wrong. And it's offensive to some of us who want to know, are you here for our children? And I truly believe you are all here for our children. I know some of you, and I do believe that. But last week, or last month I should say, which is incredibly disappointing. So I just hope that you would take with you from the show earlier and what everybody is saying here, the great responsibility that you have. And we also totally appreciate the fact that this is a volunteer job. And you put in so much time and effort, and you give up your family time. And some of you are working full-time and you're also doing this. And I completely appreciate that as a full-time working parent. But there's a goal here. The goal is to make sure that our children get the best education possible, and the time and energy is spent on that and not other things. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate it. And I hope that, you know, in the future this does not happen again, and that transparency is the theme with the goal of helping our children. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, I see no other comments. We're going to move on in the meeting to correspondence. We have Dr. Teresa Bogley, CE Principal, requests board acceptance of 2 generous grants from the following organizations. Morgan Stanley Foundation in the amount of $10,000 to support the continuation of the Before School Chess Club and the CE School Climate. A very nice gift from Morgan Stanley. And Katapiti Cares in the amount of $1,000 to support the CE Climate Goals, including professional development and civic engagement. And they are on enclosure 17 and 18. Moving on to the next portion would be Superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr.
President, we need a motion. And
we need a motion for that, for the acceptance? Yes. Sorry about that. Do you hear a motion? I hear a second for the acceptance of those 2 gifts. Now, here, all in favor, say aye.
Discussion.
Aye. Oh.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes? Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, great. Now we're ready to move on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board action is requested regarding the enclosed personnel changes. Appointments for promotion, employment, or transfer are subject to the presentation of valid credentials, employment verification documentation, and state-mandated requirements. That is enclosure 19. We also have extra duty, extra pay contracts in enclosure 20. That's all I have.
That's it, all right. And that, a motion for that?
Yep.
All right, do we hear a motion for that? And do we hear a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes? Nays? Ayes have it. You need to say discussion. Discussion again. Tap me on the shoulder. Okay. It's the first time out. Each one. Any discussion? Yeah, move right into the vote. Sorry about that. Okay, we move on to the board student representatives report.
Hi, so we've had a lot going on over the course from December to January. Mostly, a lot of our clubs have been back up in action after winter break. Interact Club just volunteered with Salvation Army, and that went really well, and we helped the Norristown Conshohocken community. Also, Anti-Domestic Violence Club just held a fundraiser where they raised about $400 that is going towards the Laurel House. Also, our very own senior, Taylor O'Brien, just scored the most basketball points ever. She beat the last person, who was from, when was he from? 2005, so, and she's headed to Bucknell next year. Lastly, finals are coming up. They are next week, so a lot of the students are definitely buckling down on the books for that.
So the ski club went to Stratton, Vermont, January 5th, and throughout that weekend, and the 30-some kids that went had a great time. It was very successful. There's a mock trial tournament at the University of Pennsylvania this weekend, so the club's getting ready for that. And student council is gearing up for Cupid's Cuties, which is going to take place on Valentine's Day, and the 9 boys and 9 girls that were picked are pretty excited, and all the students are as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And then we move on into new business. And Leslie?
Yes. Thank you, Felix. We have some appointments to make this evening. The first one is for the legislative chairperson. The legislative chairperson is involved in the Pennsylvania School Boards Association's Legislative Action Program, which is a statewide program to increase school directors' participation in the legislative process of the state. Each district's designee represents his or her respective school board at county-level meetings and receives special legislative publications from the PSBA. Motion to appoint Eunice Franklin Becker to serve as legislative chairperson for 2018. That's a motion.
All right. And we have a motion. We have a second.
Any discussion about that? All right, let's go to the next one. Then we have a PSBA representative.
I would just like to say, I would like to say that Mrs. Peduzzi, who's held these 2 spots for the last year, shockingly to me, because I find this difficult material, but she's really gotten into it and really done a great job. And I'm sorry to see that she is not going to continue in that. I'm sure Eunice will do a fine job, but I would have liked to have seen some continuity in that. I just wanted to make that comment.
You could do it.
Do you want to vote them separately?
We could do it all together.
All right, so we're going to do it one at a time. So we have a motion. Do we hear a second? We have discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? All right. Moving on to the next.
All right. Now we have PSBA representative. The PSBA representative is responsible to attend a minimum of 2 regional cabinet meetings a year held in our region and developing and maintain two-way communication between the school board and the PSB's regional structure. Share PSBA regional reports at regular meetings of our board, and assist in planning future regional meetings and provide general input and guidance to the various regional members serving on the PSBA committees. Additionally, this position also acts as the employee relations contact. I'm making a motion to appoint Eunice Franklin Becker to serve as legislative chairperson for 2018. And that is a motion.
Second it. Discussion? Hearing none. Do we hear a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes.
Congratulations, Eunice.
Okay.
Now, an appointee to the Colonial School District Education Foundation. The CSDEF is an organization that supports the educational mission of the Colonial School District by providing financial assistance in the form of general support and grants for educational activities, programs, and initiatives. A Colonial School Board member represents the district on the foundation's board. This is a motion to appoint Susan Moore to serve as CSDEF district representative for 2018.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Leslie?
The last one is for a representative of the Vocational Technical School Board. The CMTHS Joint Operating Committee, JOC, consists of 3 members appointed from each of the 3 participating districts, which are Colonial, Norristown, and Upper Marion. It's a motion to appoint Eunice Franklin Becker at the Colonial School District's Board Representative to the CMTHS Joint Operating Committee for the 2018-2020 term. So that is a 2-year term. Is that right?
All right.
And that is a motion to appoint
We have a
Eunice.
motion. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Or, sorry, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Congratulations again. You'll be very busy next year.
Yeah. We have, next item is K-12 calendar approval. Rosemary.
The Colonial School District Board of Directors determined the start date for the 2018-2019 school year at the October 2017 board meeting. And we're making a motion, board direction, and direction that is requested regarding the K-12 calendar for the 2018-2019 school year, enclosure 21, and request that this calendar be accepted.
All right, so we have a motion on the calendar. We have a second. Any discussion?
Just for the board's information, Upper Merion and Norristown, with whom we partner for the technical school, are both starting on the same date. So that'll be good for services. That's not always been the case in the past.
I do have a question. Do we know when the PSSA schedules the dates are? Because I know that they got moved for next year. And I'm just curious where they may fall in that. Might be too preliminary to have that information.
I don't have them on me. I think they have the projections up for the next few years, so we know they're going to be later. Go right ahead.
April 15th is the start for next year, and April 29th are the 2 weeks for PSSA testing.
April 15th is our spring break.
Well, it's a window. It's a window from
Okay.
April 15th, so
Okay.
it's a 2-week window.
So after they come back from spring break, they'll be doing their testing.
Okay. Calendar approval. We have the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Rosemary, again.
We have 4 different overnight out-of-state student trips up for approval, submitted by Dr. Jason Bacani, the high school principal. 3 high school chorus members to participate in District 11 regional and state choral performances on January 24th through the 26th, March 1st through the 3rd, and April 18th through the 21st. That's enclosure 22. High school band members to participate in the PMEA District 11 band at Perkiomen Valley Middle School. Now, this some are being retroactively approved. They had been approved as students went because of the snow days. January 10th through the 12th, region band from March 22nd to the 24th at Garnet Valley High School, and all-state band from April 18th to the 21st in Lancaster, enclosure 23. The high school indoor track team to travel to New York City to compete in the Hispanic Games Invitational Tournament on January 6th. I don't know if that one actually happened. It did. And the Ocean Breeze Invitational Tournament on January 28th. The high school wrestling team to compete in the Grapple at the Brook Invitational Tournament in Silver Spring, Maryland from January 12th to the 13th, enclosure 25, and that already has happened. Seek approval for these trips.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second for the approvals?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it.
And then the adult evening school instructors for the winter spring 2018. Mr. Dave Sherman, adult evening school coordinator, seeks approval of instructors scheduled to teach in the 2018 winter spring sessions, enclosure 26. I make a motion for the approval of these instructors.
All right. Do we have a second on that? Discussion? All right. All in favor, say, sir.
Yeah, I just want to encourage all of those in the community to really take advantage of the opportunity to avail yourselves of the evening school courses. I think there's some great courses in lots of different areas, and it's something that, that we do to reach members of the community, all members of the community, but especially members of the community who may not have kids in school, but who are taxpayers and who enable the district to do the things that it does. So I really encourage people to take advantage of that.
Okay. And the discussion, so we have the motion and the second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. All right, Adam?
The next item on the agenda is a request from Mr. Bogley, the Director of Technology, for board approval of a board docs and user agreement. Board docs is a program that will enable us to manage the agendas, the minutes, the policies online, so that we don't have to, that we don't have to kill as many trees as we do and print everything out in paper. It'll be, I think, good for the environment, but also make the management of the documents and the tracking of documents easier. So this is enclosure 27, and I would make a motion for board approval of that agreement.
All right, do I have a second? Any further discussion on board docs?
I am so excited about this. It's been at least a year and a half or so that this has been sort of in discussion, and I'm really happy that Dr. Christian jumped in full board, full ahead, and with Felix giving the push. I'm super excited, and I think our district will super benefit from what they'll be able to do for us with our past stuff and then going forward. So thank you for the diligence in getting it done.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that too, that it's much needed for organizing all the documentation that we incur. You used it at O&J previously, and you had a very good experience with it.
Yes, it's a very powerful tool. Allow you to search terms. We'll have all of our policies up there. It interfaces well with the website, so public will have access to agendas and previous presentations. So it's very useful, and we'll have devices for the board so they can access all the information very quickly. So there is some training involved, which will take place in late February. All of our assistants have been through several webinar trainings thus far. So, and there is a bit of upfront work with uploading a significant amount of data. So we'll start with the most recent year, and work our way back, and then it'll update as we go.
Excellent. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Eunice, we have contract bus driver approval.
Sorry. Hopefully this will work. Contracted bus driver approval. Kathy Ellis, Director of Transportation, requests approval of school bus drivers employed by First Student and SIG for the 2017-18 school year, and that's enclosure 28.
And we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Mel?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the grievance settlement between, excuse me, with respect to grievance number 1, 2017-18, between the Colonial School District and the Colonial Education Association.
All right. Do we have a second? Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Adam?
I would like to make a motion to appoint Dave Zablowski, our business manager, as board treasurer effective January 19th, 2018.
All right. Do we have a second on that? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Congratulations. I would also like to make a motion to appoint David Zablowski as the Colonial School District's representative to the Tax Collection Committee effective January 19th, 2018.
Second?
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on. I'm going to put a motion to approve a resolution will authorize Superintendent Dr. Michael Christian to sign any and all contracts, grants, and/or licenses with the PDE electronically. Do I have a second on that? Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Ayes have it. All right, Leslie?
Okay, thanks, Felix. Karen Burke, our Director of Pupil Services and Special Education, seeks board approval for a settlement agreement in lieu of FAPE. Due to restrictions regarding student confidentiality and privacy, this agreement was reviewed in executive session and cannot be revealed here. That's a motion to accept.
We have a second? Second. Any discussion? We're hearing none. Is there a motion to approve? Or all say aye?
Aye.
Ayes? Ayes have it. Okay. Adam?
I would like to make a motion for board acceptance of the June 30th, 2017 audit report. Mr. Sobolowski, the business manager, recommends the acceptance of the report, and I asked him to just say a few words about what the audit report found.
Thank you. As you can see, it's a pretty significant document. With your acceptance tonight, it will be posted on the website for public review. Just to basically go over this, it is what's known as a clean audit. Our auditors gave the opinion that the report accurately reflects the financial position of the Colonial School District. I do encourage the public to read it. A very informative document, especially the management discussion and analysis letter that starts on page 4. That puts a summary of the whole year in a narrative. Although the report shows that expenditure has exceeded revenue by $402,000, the budget results were much better than expected based on some strong revenue collection. The budget did include a transfer of $4.1 million to the Capital Reserve Fund for future building projects. But overall, the district is very fiscally and financially strong.
Thank you, Mr. Sobolowski, for reviewing that. And with that, I would like to move that the board accept the June 30, 2017 audit report.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on for consideration and deliberation over the results of the request for proposal for general solicitor services. And just to recap what has transpired, we, at the December meeting, we had approved the request for an RFP, and we had 5 firms respond to our request. The five firms were Fox Rothschild, Whistler Pearlstein, Rudolph Clark. There was a joint submittal from the law offices of Shaw and Kilkenny and Dishell, Bartle, and Dooley, and we had Sweet, Stevens, Katz, Williams respond. The response from the 5 firms were very impressive. As part of the package, we requested a questionnaire to be completed. I believe that it was of great value. The interview process was additionally informative. Each firm was interviewed utilizing the same questions and time requirements. And I'd like to thank the board for being very engaged and part of that process. All the firms were more than qualified. As a school district, I feel that we were very fortunate to have a strong field of candidates. I believe the process was comprehensive and transparent and fair. All board members were engaged and committed to find the best fit for our school district. So on that note, do we have a motion on our solicitor services?
I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
After all of our due diligence and study on this issue, I'd like to make a motion to terminate the services of Fox Rothschild LLP effective January 22nd, 2018, but permitting Fox Rothschild LLP to complete the handling of all pending work assignments to completion or transition as directed by the board or its designee, pursuant to the terms of the district's current fee agreement with Fox Rothschild, and to appoint Rudolph Clark LLC as solicitor from January 22nd, 2018 through June 30th, 2018. Subject to the execution of a fee agreement substantially based upon the fee agreement Rudolph Clark LLC appended to its response to the RFP for general solicitor services, including A, a retainer of $24,000 per year, and B, an hourly rate of $175 for attorneys for non-routine items not covered by the retainer, and an hourly rate of $125 for paralegals for tax assessment matters only. Everything else is included in the hourly rate, all other paralegal service. And that is a motion.
All right, do we have a second on that motion? We have a second, and I'd like to open up for discussion.
Yes, a few words.
Sure, Mel.
First of all, I found the process very fair and open and informative. Learned some stuff that I didn't know after being on the board for 8 years. I was tasked by Mr. Raimondo to seek some references for some of the people, and I did have the opportunity to speak to 7 different superintendents and an intermediate unit director. And based upon the information from the interviews, from my telephone conversations and my own research, I could support 3 of the firms that were recommended, but I cannot support this motion. I feel the other three are much more better qualified, experienced, and knowledgeable, and concentrate in education law, and I would hope that we would have considered them.
I have a question for Mr. Solicitor. Can we put another motion on the floor? How would it work for us to be able to have a discussion for a motion for a different?
You could have a motion to amend the underlying motion, so that would require a motion and a second from an individual, and the motion to amend, if there is a motion and a second, would have precedence over the underlying motion.
So I would like to make a motion to continue our work with Fox Rothschild, and at the end of the term of the current contract, have the discussion of what would happen going forward.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion on that amendment? Can we take a vote at this time?
So now we need more reasons. Let's.
So this is just the vote on the amendment only.
Okay, I would like to say, I think that some of the people in the audience asked a question that I haven't had answered, which I would hope I could get answered tonight. I've been on the board for 16 years, and Mr. Solicitor has been our solicitor for all 16 of those years. I have not heard anything that is egregious enough to have decided to terminate him in such a fashion. In the 16 years I've been on the board, we have never ended a contract mid-year unless there was something seriously wrong with the services we are being provided. And I've asked the question, and I think some people asked it tonight, and I'd like to know why we took this route, and I'd like an answer to that question.
I'll do my best to give you an answer. So, as any board, it's part of to do due diligence on our professional services, and I think it is wise for any board to have to investigate, to question, to have confidence in their legal representation. And part of the process is to review. And I think that waiting 6 months is not ideal. Has it been done in the past? Sure. But I think this was an opportunity for us to, which it was a review process that hasn't been done in quite a long time. I think 8 years was the last time that this process has been done. So I think it was long overdue. And I think it was a good opportunity for all of us to evaluate our solicitor services. It was an opportunity for us to gain knowledge and us to have confidence in the decision process that we're going to.
Okay, and I can't argue with that. And I think the point I made in December was that had you waited until April to make this move, I don't think you would have gotten much pushback, because an RFP is a fabulous idea. And I don't think anyone would have argued that point. I guess the question remains, and I don't think I have yet gotten an answer, why is Mr. Solicitor no longer suitable for this school district? What has occurred that has made that decision lead us to this point?
Well, Eunice?
As a new board member coming in, I want to do my due diligence and understand. And some of the things that I've looked at, as an example, are our district policies. We have 182 policies on our website. And the PSBA recommendation, having just taken the training that several of you strongly recommended, and it was fabulous, recommended that our policies get reviewed every 3 years. We have, of our 182 policies, 125 of them, by my count of what's posted on the website, 69%, have not been updated in the last 10 years. By my count, 91 of our policies have not been updated in the last 20 or more years, and 37% haven't been updated in 30 or more years. And that is something that I would expect our solicitor to advocate for, and that's, that crosses many collections of board members over time, but one of the constants over the last 16 has been our solicitor. So it raises a question for me of who's recommending, who's helping make sure that our policies as a district, which guide everything that we do, remain current. So that was an important question for me coming onto the board.
Want to respond to that?
Go ahead.
We've been, for the last 2 years, every board meeting, we've had at least 2 policies that we've been going over because you have to have 2 reads. It takes time. We've been in the process. We've also been in the process of getting access to the PSBA board docs so that we can go through all of them. I don't know exactly what the role of the solicitor is. It's not 100% his job to do that. It's also our superintendent's job, our committee's job, the board's job to be finding those policies that need updating and bring those to the committees so they can be discussed, have a first read, have a second read, bring it to a board meeting, and get it approved. From my understanding, that has nothing to do with Mr. Sultanic. That has to do with our board leadership, our superintendent, and the processes that we were doing. And I believe it was 2 to 3 policies a month that we were updating, which is a lot when you're talking about having to go through those reads and discuss them.
I would agree with Mrs. Peduzzi. I don't think it's the superintendent's, I don't think it's the solicitor's job to propose policy changes. That's our job. And that's the administration's job. And it's the solicitor's job to give us opinions when we ask him to.
That is correct, Mel, and a solicitor's guidance is very important in this process. And you could see by the numbers, our policies are in, I would have to give them a very poor rating. I mean, we have policies that are, no, the policies. We have policies from 1965. And guidance from a solicitor would say, you guys need to take action on this. Now, can you say that he didn't and it was all his fault? No. But that component is critical. And as we develop new policies, as we're going to aggressively go after updating our policies and developing board docs and really bringing our policies out of the 1965 range into 2018, you need to have confidence in your solicitor in developing these policies. And you need to have a fit for the solicitor that knows our community, that recognizes the needs and the desires of our community, and will align the policies that we desire to have. So there was a better fit, and we think that Rudolph Clark can provide those policies and that guidance needed, just on that one aspect. So I understand what you're saying, and you're right on that point, but it is, I would give this a poor rating, and we're going to have some work to do. And who do we want to do that work with? Someone who's been here for 16 years and hasn't really addressed this issue, or we want to take a fresh approach to policy development. And that's why I think that Rudolph Clark can fit that need.
So that's your main reason? Is that
It's not
or it's
the
a
main reason. I would
okay.
say it is a factor in my decision-making process.
Okay, I would like to ask another question along the same lines. Having, like I said, been on the board for 16 years and having been president for 3, rarely do I interact with the solicitor except at executive session and board meetings. Very, very few times have we had phone calls. That interaction occurs between the solicitor and our cabinet members and between the solicitor and our superintendent. We don't hire have not, in my knowledge, hired anyone in this district who is not, without getting the input of our administration and or our cabinet and or our superintendent, depending on the position. I'm just asking the question as to how much input our cabinet, who works with our solicitor on a daily basis, has our cabinet had input into this decision-making?
Well, I can give you some feedback on that. Well, Dr. Christian sat during the interview process, as long as our business manager, Dave Sobolowski. They were part of the process. They were engaged in the discussion. But it comes down to, it's a PSBA guidance. It's a board decision.
It is absolutely a board
So it's the 9
decision.
people up here that have to make the decision. So
I agree with you totally, Felix. You're right. It is a board decision.
They do the work.
I'm just asking you, what kind of feedback or questioning was done of the cabinet and the superintendent as to their relationship and satisfaction with our current solicitor and their feeling that we needed to move on and change? Just an important point to my thinking.
Well, to one point that you brought up, that you had very little interaction with the solicitor, is actually, I would say, kind of a detriment. The solicitor provides a huge resource to the board, and the fact that your interaction was only 2 to 3 times a year.
No, I didn't say that.
What did you say
I
then?
said that I interacted with the solicitor every month at executive session, every month at a meeting, but overall, I did not call the solicitor, nor did the solicitor call me, unless there was an issue that needed to be go directly to the board. We had a lot of interaction when we were looking for a new superintendent.
Could that be because we would be charged every time you called? I
No,
understand
it
we were
was
charged.
not. It was not
But
because.
would we be charged every time you called, or not? We're not charged.
It depends on the subject matter. We are not charged every time we call the solicitor. We are charged depending on the subject matter as per the retainer. So my question still is, I didn't call him when there was an HR issue. I didn't call him when there was a special ed issue or a finance issue. Those are go through directly through the cabinet. So to me, their input and their opinions matter a great deal. And I know that Dr. Christian and Mr. Sobolowski were there because I was in the interviews as well. And they listened, and they asked their question when it was their turn. But I'm asking what kind of input they had into the decision-making.
I'd like to ask the question right now. My main question for Mr. Sultanic is, what is the role of the solicitor supposed to be with regard to policy making / updating?
Ultimately, under governance, and it's not addressed in the school code specifically, but from good governance, it is ultimately the board's responsibility to develop policies. And indeed, the solicitor's services as part of policy review is an important one. I don't think anybody here would deny that fact. And I will tell you that there were a number of situations in this particular school district where policies were brought forward to not only the previously constituted board, but previous boards, where policy issues were indeed debated and the like. And in fact, and I can tell you, we had a previous board where every time we made even minor revisions to the policy, the debates would last month after month after month, and frankly, the solicitor doesn't control those debates. I can tell you anytime after a new statute is adopted and the like, our firm very frequently issues alerts and makes recommendations with respect to policy modifications. And in fact, we have done perhaps more policy modifications than any other firm, not only in the region, but in the state. But that's a function of the board we represent and their desire for us to get involved in that process up front. It would actually be a fairly costly process for most school boards to have their solicitors develop policies on an ad hoc basis, which is why the Pennsylvania School Boards Association started a policy guidance service.
Which we're now enrolled in. We just recently enrolled in that guidance from PSBA. Is that Dr. Christian?
Correct.
Which we took action this year on that, or fall of 2017?
Last fall.
Last fall of 2017,
And-
which hasn't been done. So the
And-
point
and-
being,
and I
Megan,
can-
on guidance, and you're, not to interrupt you, but I just wanted to take, the numbers don't lie. 70%, almost 70% of our policies haven't been touched in 10 years. That is, it's unacceptable. But I understand your role as...
I've made recommendations to modify policies, a number of which never occurred, and I think that can be documented. But I don't believe that that's, and I've also made recommendations in the past to use the PSBA policy service, and I've made recommendations that even utilizing that service, that council review them, because sometimes those policies aren't exactly, I think, always in the best interest of the district. But you're entitled to your opinion.
Thank you for that answer.
Excuse me, I just wanted to say, I had some dental surgery this afternoon. I'm going to leave the room right now for a bit.
I'm concerned about our fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers. And we all know that we're facing a huge enrollment boom in the next several years, which is going to tax our district with a lot of expenses. And the firm that I recommend has a lower hourly rate and does not include any paralegal charges whatsoever. And I think we have to be fiscally prudent about this. And I'm concerned that that's gonna be a problem going forward.
I'd like
And
to
maybe
address.
the public doesn't realize how much solicitor bills do come to. They're in the tens-
to.
Can I please finish?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They're in the tens of thousands up to a couple $100,000 a year. It's a lot of money we're talking. We're not talking about $10,000 or $20,000. It's a lot of money in billable hours, the total bill. And if we can chip away at that a bit and take some off, we were thrilled when $1,000 or $2,000 comes in from a corporation as a donation. We all applaud, think that's terrific. But we could save a lot more by changing solicitors to another.
Clark is $5 less an hour than Fox Rothschild and $1,000 less retainer.
And without paralegal services at all. There'll be no paralegal services.
And what happens when our representatives from their firm have to recuse themselves because we are doing a renovation in Plymouth Township, and that they also represent Plymouth Township? I'm actually asking that question because I don't know the answer. If those attorneys cannot do the job, don't we have to pay another attorney to do that job?
Actually, Sue brought up that point during the interview process, conflict of interest. And I think it was addressed relatively well, and
He did answer it.
I can't repeat the whole thing.
Yeah, he did.
Very good job of explaining.
He answered, of course, when that question was asked, he was not the solicitor in Plymouth Township yet, and he is now.
But the example holds true.
The example holds true. He said he would have to recuse himself from either the township representation or the school district representation. He thought he would probably go with the township and recuse himself there because he would have been working on the school district piece for a longer period of time. I thought his answer was reasonable.
That's standard practice for most law firms when they have a conflict
I
of
actually
interest.
liked the other gentleman's answer better, and he said he would recuse himself from both because he could never get away from the appearance of a conflict.
Is that Whistler Pearlstein?
No, that's what, no. Sean Kilkenny said. He would recuse himself from both.
Oh, right.
And Mr. Bartle agreed with him that that would be the proper thing to do because you can't really, even though you're not representing them, you still represent them. You're still that person. My question, because now we are looking at a renovation to follow up on Kathy, is a renovation and or addition or whatever. We know a lot of work and a great deal of money going into the middle school where Mr. Clark is now the solicitor. When we have a contract with our solicitor for fees, those are set, they are in writing, if our solicitor has to recuse himself, then we have to go out and get services of another attorney with whom we do not have a contract. So there I think there's a huge unknown as to the cost. That's one piece. The other piece, to answer Leslie, is that when one of our cabinet people or our superintendent call Mr. Sultanic with a question, my guess is that he almost always has the answer at the off the top of his head, because this is all he does. So the fees, if they are a fee-based, an hourly-based thing, wouldn't be that great, because he doesn't have to do research. He knows the answers. He's done this before. And I'm sure there are times when it might be new and he has to look into it. If we hire a solicitor who does not do this very often, and even in the districts where he does do this, perhaps farms out some of the work to other lawyers, because of he's not that experienced, then we're looking at research time. We're looking at, a longer period of time to get the same answer, which then racks up our cost. So I think you're confused?
That's supposition. I don't know if that's, or just,
well,
it's conjecture.
Yeah,
You don't really know that it's.
Conjecturing.
I am conjecturing that the three firms that do nothing but school law would be very, very quick to answer most questions. The firms that don't do much school law, in my view, because when we did this 8 years ago, I remember one of the same people telling us, well, I have the books and I can do the research and I can look up the answer. So, I mean, you're a lawyer, Adam, and you're looking up answers, then the fees have to be more. I just think that to hire a specific school, as Mel said, school attorney is irresponsible both fiscally and for the students and the district.
Mr. Raimundo, I just want to make one comment. I respect the decision, whatever this board wants to do moving forward, and that is clearly your right in the process. But if I can give you some parting legal advice on your fee arrangement moving forward, I think this might be in your best interest, because with legal services, I believe Mrs. Moore pointed out appropriately, it's the rate times the number of hours that goes to the ultimate issue. But there is also an issue as to what is included or excluded from the base level retainer. There is one provision here that is of note that the CFO of our firm probably would be happy as the result, I'm being candid with you, as the result of the action that you're undertaking this evening. That during non-county-wide reassessment years, attendance at county assessment hearings for commercial appeals as directed by the business office, based upon a guideline that we work out in terms of what we attend or not attend, based upon that, are included within the base level retainer. And that is, in this district, given the number of commercial appeals, a significant number. So I'm suggesting that if, and it appears likely to me right now, we will part ways, I would strongly urge you, as part of negotiating with the successor firm, that you look at that issue, because that is worth something of significant dollar substance to this district, given the number of commercial properties.
Before we vote, and I don't want to put Dr. Christian on the spot, but Dr. Christian, has anyone asked you for your opinion?
I've had conversations, and I can only be honest with, I've worked as a superintendent in 3 districts now, and have been in administration for several years. So I certainly am an advocate for the process. I'm glad the board conducted interviews. I did find them to be valuable, and it's imperative that we, try to move forward from this, whatever the decision is, because, I thought the comments that were echoed at the beginning of the meeting, we have many decisions we have to make with the 5,000 children that we have, and that is the administration's task, and obviously in our 800-some employees, we're one of the larger employers in the area, so those are the things that these folks are charged with. So they've shared their comments with me. I can tell you that in my experience in administration in central office, I've worked with several different firms. 2 firms, Raphael and Pupio, Cagle, Kellen, Almy, and Lord, did not apply with the RFP. I thought all 5 firms, after listening to them, I can work with any firm. I certainly want timeliness. I want accurate information, because ultimately this is a board decision, and the solicitor represents the board, who represents the district, and that's their job to protect them. They work with administration, but they work for you, who represent our constituents. My experiences have primarily been with Fox Rothschild and Sweet Stevens, and they have been very positive experiences, and that's what I'd like to share with the board this evening.
Just to repeat what I said earlier and what one of our speakers said, if I need open heart surgery, I'm not going to my general practitioner to have open heart surgery. I'm going to a specialist. The firm we're considering doesn't even mention education law on their website. I prefer a firm who specializes in education law.
Okay, before I say anything, I just want to say thank you all for coming. There's a lot of people here. It shows you care, and there's nothing worse than parents who don't care. So thank you for coming. You're confused. You're hearing stuff you don't know what it's saying. You're hearing the word policy over and over and over again. So I'm going to tell you my mindset of how I picked. First of all, every applicant is qualified. We all established that. And I was reading the RFPs and all the information, and a couple of things stood out at me. And this was from Rudolph Clark's school. It's at Norristown and Pennsbury. One of these is about intellectual property and information technology, and it talks about social media, and it says, the thing that I liked says, the old homeschool divide no longer applies when you're talking about cyberbullying. The second one talks about First Amendment rights. This one talks about Equal Protection Clause issues as they relate to transgendered students. They've advised municipal clients on Second Amendment issues as they pertain to the presence of guns at polling places in schools. This is what I care about. This is the values that I have. But it hasn't been done. And this policy has 18 examples of professional, adult, and student boundaries. This one was updated in May about cyberbullying. This one was about, can a voter or poll watcher show up to a polling place in a school with a gun? The answer is no. Nobody's talked about this in 8 years. This one has 30 examples spelled out of the following uses of district technology resources are prohibited. These are specific, they're well written, they're explained, and I think we need that, and this is what we need in Colonial School District. As a parent and as a school board member, this is what I like to see.
Adam?
I also applaud everybody for coming out and sharing their comments and their concerns about the district's legal services, and I just encourage you to continue to come out and share your concerns about a whole range of issues that face this district. We offer excellent education. We want to continue to do that, and we obviously have our kids top of mind. And I don't think, I think everybody in this room has kids, the kids in the district top of mind. You wouldn't serve on the school board and volunteer to do this job if you didn't. You wouldn't work in a school district if you didn't and you wouldn't bother to come out to a school board meeting if you didn't. And we may disagree about how to do that and the ways to do that, but I don't think ultimately it's helpful to sort of to impugn people's motives, and I don't think it's helpful to cast aspersions on folks. This is this is a byproduct of transparency, of doing things out in the open, hearing from the community, being able to discuss the different candidates, and being able to hear the varying qualifications of the candidates. And ultimately, we make a decision. But this wasn't handled behind closed doors, as has happened year upon year upon year in the past. We've had the same solicitor, in fact, for almost 19 years. And I'm not going to speak negatively about him or his firm, because they're an excellent firm and he's an excellent lawyer. I'm only going to speak to my reasoning about why I think it's important for us to consider going in a different direction at this time. One of the things that I ran on was fighting against the assault on public education and on our values from Washington and Harrisburg. And I think it's important that we have a solicitor who will fight for our schools, for our kids, and for those values. I don't think today we have the luxury of business as usual in this climate. And I look at some of the things that Rudolph Clark has done, and it's impressed me. I look at something like the representation that Mike Clark gave to Bruce Haynes when he was Register of Wills and began issuing same-sex marriage licenses in Montgomery County. Now, it's not education law, true, but ultimately that was standing up, that was being on the forefront, on the cutting edge of an issue, and ultimately that legal advice was proved correct, and same-sex marriage is now the law of the land. You know, I look at the work that Rudolph Clark did in Pennsbury in passing a policy protecting the rights of transgender students, and I think that's important, to be on the cutting edge of an issue that, when we want to be on the right side of that. I also look, from a fiscal perspective at the work that Rudolph Clark has done recovering more than $20 million for schools in the county, and we know budgets are tight. In representing the Montgomery County Tax Claim Bureau in selling delinquent properties. I know they're a smaller firm. Nobody denies that. But I think that there are pluses to a smaller firm. I mean, I happen to work for a smaller firm myself. You can get more customized service, more customized advice that's tailored to you as the client, not off-the-shelf advice that might have to be calibrated across a range of districts, across the county, and indeed across the entire Commonwealth. At a smaller firm, you'll know who's doing the work because there's only a limited number of attorneys. I also think it's important that their attorneys include a current serving school board member and a former school board member who understand the challenges that we face as school board members in advocating for our communities and for our students. I also think it's important to me that they really have a positive outlook and a positive relationship when it comes to unions. And they approach union negotiations, and they approach unions from a relationship building point of view, that they want to have an ongoing, open relationship of communication and be part of that process. We have a lot of unions here. That's a really important aspect of what we have to do day in, day out. And it's nice, I think, to have a firm that's committed to approaching unions with respect and with openness. And I also think it's important, from my perspective, when I think about it, I know people have circulated lists of the numbers of districts that various firms represent. And I will say, certainly Rudolph Clark is not at the top of that list. But I think that's a plus, because I think they're going to have an incentive to make sure that we're getting the best possible service. We're just not going to be another client for them. And I think that's a real positive.
One of the things that one of the attorneys said during the interviews, which I asterisked on all of my notes, was the solicitor shouldn't be the one coming with the ideas. It is our job to come with the ideas. It is our solicitor's job. It is our solicitor's job to then advise us on the best way to go about implementing those ideas. So when Mr. Shupak mentions that Clark is, being on the right side and then Mrs. Dow talking about, the policies and being proactive, that is not the solicitor's job. It is our job. It is now, with our beautiful relationship with Board Docs and PSBA, they will be another asset for us to encourage us to keep up to date with state laws that are being passed, federal regulations, making sure that we are on top of everything. It is not the solicitor's job to push forth political agendas. It is the solicitor's job to advise the board. And that is what makes me nervous about Rudolph Clark, is I believe they were proud of it in their interview, that they were making a voice. It's not their job to make a voice. It's our job to make a voice and have the solicitor advise us. I don't want to feel political and feel like, I want us to do our job and have our solicitor help us do our job.
I would like to add that one of the firms that we interviewed, it was not Rudolph Clark, it was not Mr. Sultanic and Fox Rothschild, but one of the firms spoke very candidly about, we talked about transgender, LGBTQ, all those kinds of issues in our interviews. And they commented that in one district, the board wanted X, and so they developed the policy for X, and they supported what the board wanted and showed them how to do that within the law. In another district, a different district, they had the exact opposite opinion. That solicitor then did exactly what the board asked, and they developed a policy and an opinion that supported their wishes and was legal. And that's, to me, and that's where I think, you're the lawyer, I'm not, but my take on what a solicitor for a school district is not someone who develops policy, not someone who even suggests policy, someone who maybe says your policy's lousy, but who tells us and makes us do things in a legal and in an appropriate fashion. It's our job, as Kathy said, as a board, to make those decisions, not our solicitor's job.
Well, I agree that it's certainly not the solicitor's job to make the decisions. It's obviously the board's job to make the decisions on policy and on all issues. But I do think, and this is where I may disagree a little bit, I do think it's the solicitor's job to protect his or her client. And part of how you protect your client is you tell them when they may need to institute policies on different issues, on cutting-edge issues. You bring that up to them affirmatively, because now, granted, the board may say, I don't want to do that. The board may say, we disagree. And ultimately, it's the board's decision to make the decision. But I do think it's part of the solicitor's role to certainly flag issues for the board and to raise issues where policies may need updating, where there are cutting-edge issues that the board should be thinking about if the board's not thinking about them. I think that is absolutely the role of the solicitor.
And I don't disagree with you, Adam, and I do believe from my experience, that Mr. Sultanic and his firm have done that. So I disagree in how it's been handled in this district. I think that there have been issues. We discussed having a certain policy not that long ago, and it was the opinion of the board and the solicitor that we weren't ready for that policy and that there were no issues, so therefore a policy would only create more problems. So I think that these things have been discussed. You know, we can agree to disagree on the subject, but I think that to me, a solicitor is not here for policy. That's why we hire Dr. Christian. That's why we have a cabinet. They are our policy makers who give us advice, and then we as a board.
And this is why I was hoping that our new board members could spend some time with Mr. Sultanic and feel him out and spend 5-6 months and see what the feel is like. And at the end of the contract, we decide, hey, you know what? He wasn't cutting it for me. Sorry, Jeff, you're out. But for right now, to not have had the experience and to see how he actually does work, because I believe the 4 members who have left the board would all vouch for having had a positive experience working with Mr. Sultanic, or at least taking the advice of Mr. Sultanic. So I would have hoped that we could have provided you guys the opportunity to experience him in the working environment.
I do want to say something on a very personal basis on the issue of transgender rights, and that's something is an issue that is very close to me, both from a personal and a philosophical viewpoint. I do represent a lot of districts, and there are districts as our society that have polarizing views with respect to transgender rights. And even though I would probably classify that this district has probably more liberal views than a majority of the districts I represent, our firm was the first firm in the state of Pennsylvania to draft a transgender policy. And our firm, and actually one of our residents, who is an attorney in our firm, who lives in Conshohocken, Shannon Pierce, developed that policy, who you've met and who have come to these meetings. And on top of it, she has spoken both on a statewide basis and regionally on the subject. But I didn't want people to leave with the opinion that we have not taken those kinds of issues in the forefront, because we've developed the model for the policy that both PSBA and others have used. And I will tell you, from a pure legal perspective, if you're representing a school district and drafting a transgender policy, it's an invitation toward litigation, because, Mr. Zablowski probably, being a veteran of a district which I represent, and he came from being the CFO, was involved in a very embroiled transgender case that resulted in a court decision upholding what the district's practice was in the absence of a policy, in a district that probably wouldn't have passed the policy if it was suggested. So I just wanted to say that from a purely personal perspective, you know, I can count votes. It's one thing I've learned after attending 8,922 school board meetings in my career, that I can count votes, and I know where this vote is headed, but I didn't want people to leave here with the understanding that this wasn't an interest and an issue for our firm, which we hold very close to our hearts.
Can I ask you a question, Jeff? Yes. So that policy your firm championed, do we have that policy here?
We do not, and I can tell you how that policy evolved.
So can I ask a follow-up question real quick?
Yes.
So you championed the policy, but we don't have it.
I didn't champion the policy. I drafted
your
the
firm
policy.
championed the policy.
No. We drafted the policy based upon the intentions of actually a neighboring school district that wanted to have it done because of the number of situations that they had. But it emanated from the administration because they felt they needed to have that guidance and board committee input. And we developed it when one didn't exist. There wasn't a template that existed. And in that respect, we, quote unquote, championed the policy.
Can you
And
answer?
then we don't have that policy, but then you just recommended not to use that policy because it's an invitation to being
Well,
sued?
You can go ahead, look, if this board philosophically wants to make a statement, you can, but I can tell you that there are a lot of very litigious special interest groups that address the issue, and we would have a discussion like that in executive session, seeking legal advice on the pros and cons of doing that. But once again, it isn't what I view as my role as solicitor to say, you as a school district need a transgender policy. And in fact, after the federal government and OCR withdrew its policy under the circumstance, there isn't a quote-unquote legal need to have a policy. There may be a moral need to have a policy, and I don't believe a solicitor should be part of your moral police.
And you may advise us not to do something, but as long as it's within the law, we may say, sorry, Jeff, we're going for it. So you're advising us what is legal under the law, a little redundant, but we can still make our own decisions as a board.
You know, one of the great privileges of giving legal advice is that it doesn't need to be followed. It just needs to be paid for, that's all.
Yeah, I appreciate all of the comments and everybody's perspectives. I think it's great. There should be a healthy debate. It's great that everybody's here. You know, typically these discussions maybe happened in a subcommittee discussion that wasn't part of the televised meeting. So parents didn't get to hear all the ins and outs unless you had the wherewithal to get to a 7:30 a.m. committee meeting or a 4 o'clock p.m. committee meeting to hear all this. I think this is really important. I want to point out one thing that, you know, Mr. Sultanic has the advantage of sort of defending his application, and none of the other candidates are sitting here doing that. So I think we should all bear that in mind.
He's earned it.
And, you know, I want to just point out, you know, my reasoning for supporting the candidate supporting, you know, it falls in line with, you know, the things that Adam and Jennifer described, you know, having an attorney who respects and works well with labor, and that's absolutely feedback that we got from references and from their application. They've come from a place of respect. They have progressive values, and frankly, you know, as you know, having run for school board, I come to this with a set of progressive values, and having somebody who's in line with that is important. Having someone who can help us recover financial benefits, such as what they've done through the Monco Tax Bureau, such as the work that they've done with the other school districts that they support, and having attorneys on their roster who would work with us, who are well experienced as school board members, in addition to having, you know, spectacular legal resumes. All of those things went into my decision making, and I just want to get that on the table and just point out that this debate is really good and really healthy, and is not necessarily something that has been part of these televised meetings in the past. And so I think it's great that you're all here and part of this, and that we're all doing this.
It makes me nervous that you say they have progressive values. I do not care if they have progressive values. I care if they can interpret the law and advise us if what our progressive endeavors are legally able to do, or we are illegally able to do. So I believe we are a progressive board, and I think that's amazing. And I am hoping that as the year goes on, we will be coming up with some wonderful things. And all we need our solicitor to do is to tell us if it is within the law. Whether they are progressive or conservative or whatever they may be, the law is the law, period. That is what makes me nervous about going with a firm who touts that they're progressive. That means they want to make a stand and get their names in the newspaper that they did something. I want to get our names in the newspaper.
And that's okay.
Of course,
And we can have different interpretations, and that's also okay.
Of course.
It's healthy and appropriate, and I just want to make sure that, you know, we can respectfully disagree, and that's fine.
Of course. Any further discussion? Okay.
You have the amendment on the
Here,
floor. You
that's
have the
correct, yes.
amendment on the floor.
So we have an amendment on the floor with a second.
And I believe that's to retain Mr. Sultanic, retain Fox Rothschild.
That is, yes, that's correct. It was to retain Fox Rothschild as our solicitor. So all in favor of voting yes on the amendment, raise your hand.
This is for Mr. Sultanic to continue? Yes.
Noes? Amendment does not pass. Okay, we'll go back to the original motion. We have the motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none? Go ahead. Do you want to?
No, nothing positive.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Moving forward, we have one last item of business, and that's a motion to approve a resolution opposing Senate Bill Number 2. And I'll ask Eunice to read that and not the whole not the whole.
Rather than read this entire resolution, I'm going to ask Dr. Christian to give a quick overview of what we're proposing. There is some legislation in Harrisburg that could potentially be very costly to Pennsylvania school districts, and so I'm going to ask Dr. Christian to
Sure.
describe.
Just in sum, the proposed bill, Senate Bill 2, creates educational savings accounts. It's also been referenced as a voucher, similar to the voucher bills that have not been passed in the past. Some of the biggest challenges for public education, should this bill succeed, it does remove funding from public schools. There's some question about the accountability for the proposed ESA vouchers and where exactly how the financial accounting will take place, because the dollars follow the student. So a student, while it does not affect Colonial School District initially, because we are not one of the lower performing schools, we're a high performing school. However, if students transfer into any district, they could be impacted because the dollars follow the student and come from the homeschool subsidy. Lastly, it does create budget challenges because of this ambiguity. So when you're thinking about it, whether you're Norristown School District or Colonial School District, when you go to develop your budget, it's hard to predict, especially in those early years, how many folks will take advantage of that. The primary reason that districts are opposing this and PSBA supports this resolution is it does draw from public funds into private schools. We have strong relationships with all the schools in our district. We want kids to come to our district. We respect parents' wishes when they choose to send their children to private schools. But our job is to offer quality educational opportunities for all of our students, and we don't want to see those funds dissipate. We get very little state funding to begin with. We certainly understand those districts that have more of a need, but the funds we do receive from the state go to help our students. So we'd like to see that continue. I ask that you support this resolution.
So we have a motion. We have a motion on the floor to approve resolution opposing Senate Bill Number 2. We have a second. Any further discussion?
It's enclosure 37 in your packet, and I had one other question. It was recommended, the Pennsylvania School Boards Association recommended that districts come out and adopt resolutions of this kind opposing the Senate bill, correct?
Correct, and they, in fact, I can't take credit for the resolution. They drafted it, and we added the date and then Colonial name to it. But we did read it, and we did talk about it at the last superintendent's meeting at the IU, and it's receiving wide support in the county. I'm sure in the surrounding counties.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Moving forward, solicitor's report.
I have no report.
Okay, moving forward, we go to committee reports.
Mr. Raimondo, can I take this opportunity to just, since this will be, I assume, Mr. Sultanic's last meeting, I just want to say how much I appreciated working with you over the last 16 years, and I think you've done a fabulous job for this district. And in spite of all the conversation here tonight, I think your efforts have been greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving forward to committee reports. Intermediate unit,
I don't have a report tonight. We did not meet in December, but we'll be meeting next week. So a report in February. Thank you.
Mel?
No report. And Human Resources, no report.
HR, personnel? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Okay. Move forward on finance?
Just briefly, our new CFO, business manager, Dave Sobolowski, has started, and he's working on some, some internal accounting changes, and the other thing, this report is that we're starting the budget process as well, and that will be a big topic in the months to come.
Yes, it will be. Okay, curriculum?
Yes, I have a brief report. Thanks, Felix. We've had 2 meetings since I last spoke because we didn't have regular board meetings in December. So our last curriculum committee was December 11th, 2017. And there we had a comprehensive presentation of proposed courses by the principals of the high school and curriculum supervisors. These courses are fabulous. Some of the courses are marine science, which can inspire students to explore careers in oceanography or to oil rigging, computational mathematics in Python, software language provides preliminary exposure to the fields of computational finance, investing, or actuarial science. Great new courses for our kids. Also, we have opportunities for students to advance their STEAM skills in some courses. AP Computer Science, AP Computer Science Principles, Honors Ceramics 2, which incorporates a lot of math, programming, and robotics. So the high school is offering some very impressive slate of new AP courses and other courses for the 2018-2019 school year. Very exciting stuff. This past Tuesday, our committee met at Ridge Park Elementary. Many of our school board members were there, along with some parents, and especially some 3rd graders that showed us what they can do with learning programming and coding using software called Scratch and Codables. Things we used to use in the upper grades, some of them in high school. It's amazing what these little ones can do. They can identify, mimic patterns, construct animated sequences using coding icons. It's a precursor to developing programming skills. So it's just amazing what our kids do. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Facilities management and transportation.
There have been a couple of meetings since the last general board meeting, the most recent of which was earlier this week, with updates on a number of the construction projects and starting to think about plans for how we're going to handle the increases in enrollment and how that will affect the middle school and Colonial Elementary. I'm going to ask Mr. Yem to give a brief update on those projects that are in process.
The, the West Gym at the high school, I'm sure you've seen the metal framings going up, so you can start to see the size and the magnitude of that project. The high school auditorium, the high school lobby will be finished up this week. Finally, the wood that's used up, the paneling, I don't know if you've seen the framing's been up, but the wood paneling will come in this week finally, and that'll be installed. The 3 elementary schools have been completed. And as you mentioned, we're starting to work on the middle school planning. So,
We put out a bid this week?
Pardon me?
We put out a bid for electrical upgrade?
I'm sorry. Yeah. We're actually putting in a new electric service for this campus, which will control this building as well as the high school. That was necessitated by the fact that the size of the West Gym is so big, we needed to upgrade the electric service.
It's not as fancy as seeing the steel up, but it's just as important.
Yep.
And the plans for the next FMT meeting to be held at, is that still in the works?
I think we were going to middle school to middle school. Yeah. February 5th.
Discussing, the plans and options for the board to consider with increased enrollment, especially as it affects our middle school. We thought it'd be a good idea to have it over in the middle school library, and that way, at the end of the committee meeting, if the board would like to, after looking at the options on paper, it's good to walk around the building and see what that may.
And the architect's going to do a presentation?
Yes, Mr. Godchall.
Be a very informative meeting. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I would just briefly, if I may, encourage folks from the community to really, to consider coming to that meeting. I think it'll be really informative, and there's obviously, big issues with increased enrollment, and something we definitely need community input around.
Anything else, Eunice? Okay.
Nope, I don't have anything on that, and
Community Relations, Safety and Wellness. Rosemary stepped out.
she's not coming back, so.
We'll pass on that. Yeah, we'll table that report. Legislative report.
Beyond the resolution that we passed earlier, I have none.
All right. And Municipal Community Liaison. Any reports? All right, hearing none. That ends the committee reports. Moving forward for information, we have a report of curriculum, instruction, and assessment as part of the packet, enclosure 30. Got a building report, 31. School activity accounts, 32. Athletic activity account, and that's enclosure 33, and a technology report, 34. That concludes the reports, and we're going to move on to questions or comments from the floor. Opportunity.
Hi there, Deanna Durante, Whitemarsh Township. I had a couple of questions sitting here listening to this meeting. I was curious, terminating the contract with the solicitor, any fines, penalties, any additional fees the school district incurs? No? What a bargain.
No.
Mr. Shupak, you talked about when you were talking about the adult education classes that it's a wonderful way to engage in the community or for community members to engage. I might add answering your emails from the community might also be a good way to engage with us as well. Just in case you missed some of them. Policies. This is the first time I'm hearing anything about the need for new policies. Felix, you seem very strong about that. Have you engaged in discussion with the board in the past that we really need to update our decades-old policies here in the district? Is this something you've been very verbal on? And perhaps if you can point me to some meeting minutes that might show that to me, I'd really appreciate that.
I would say yes, but
aside from tonight, I would say.
I can't refer to any specific meeting minutes.
No, you can't? You can't remember a time that you've brought up that the policies are so outdated that the board needs to take action, or times that you've contacted the solicitor? You can't come up with that at all?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. You also said that there was a better fit, and we think Rudolph Clark would provide it. Does this mean that you discussed this with other board members prior to the meeting, that you all discussed who you thought was the best before you voted?
Yes.
Okay.
We had discussions.
You all had discussions, all of you together, separately, over coffee?
We can talk, absolutely, we can talk about things one-on-one and one to two people. As long as we don't have a quorum there, we can discuss issues that we feel strongly about.
Great, thank you. You also said that you feel that the board needs confidence in their solicitor. I don't want to speak for anybody here tonight at all, but I'm feeling like with the way that people are applauding and the board action taken, I'm not seeing a lot of confidence that some of the people have expressed in the board tonight. And I'm curious, when you heard those comments in the beginning of the meeting, how you all felt about some people coming to you with concerns that they had about this process, and why now? Why in the middle of the year? You've talked about policies, but you can't tell me, oh my gosh, we talked about it last September, or we met over coffee in April, and we said, you know, we need to change these policies. And I'm just curious, why, what else? Policies seemed like a very interesting explanation.
I think we gave ample discussion during the deliberation part of the meeting over that motion. I don't think it's necessarily needed to rehash all the discussions.
Okay. Mr. Shupak, you also talked about this law firm and that their representation with Bruce Haynes and the same-sex marriage licenses. In addition to being a parent here in the district, my day job is a reporter, and I happen to have covered that almost every day. It was fascinating. It really was. But it also went to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court for them ultimately to decide over the course of a year. Is that really the kind of legal wranglings you want the Colonial School District involved in, that decisions have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court? Because I'm not sure that that was I just don't feel that that was the best example, because as you recall, Bruce Haynes also, several months after issuing those same-sex licenses, was also told, or also given by Pennsylvania judges, a cease and desist order to stop, saying that it wasn't legal, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court for them to redetermine how the law should be, and that the constitutional ban on same-sex marriages instituted in 1996 was, again, not constitutional. But again, that's all legal stuff. So do you really want us to be engaging in those kinds of long, drawn-out legal debates?
As a general practice, I would prefer not to do that. But if it's the right thing to do, and if it's the right thing for our students and the right thing for our teachers, I absolutely think the board should stand up and advocate for our kids and for our teachers and for the district and for our public schools. And sometimes you may have to get involved in litigation, but if it's the morally right thing to do, if it's the right thing to do for our kids, then sometimes you have to do that. But as a general matter, no. As a general matter, I would prefer that we're not involved in any litigation, frankly.
Okay. Thank you all.
Hi, BG Gangwish. Just a very quick question. I noticed, on the front, the Colonial School District, this very first page about how we have access, and it also seems that several people have complained about not being able to have board members answer their emails. Having been a parent in this district, I can't begin to tell you the number of emails that I've sent to teachers where the subject email went to spam. That includes my response to an email that a teacher sent me, and it went to spam. So I don't think everybody should categorically assume that just because you don't get an answer from a board member, that it means that they are ignoring your request. It may be that your email went to spam. So in light of that, as board members, how would you like us as parents or any interested member of the public, what do you think is the best way for us to communicate with you? And then a second add-on to that is how can we encourage greater community participation as well? So just those two questions.
I'd love to jump in. Come to these meetings. Come to the committee meetings. Linda Dahl is my hero. She comes to so many committee meetings, and she truly has a voice in these meetings. She chimes in almost like a board member. She doesn't have a vote, but she is very, very valued. And
no, but all that I'm saying it's
come to the
how
meetings.
Do you get the, but how do you, it's almost like we
BJ,
don't
can I
get,
take
we don't get the
that question?
Dave Sherman Connect Ed email blast.
So one thing that we have done and we have implemented is that we've set, we moved the meetings from 7:30 in the morning on any given morning to the first Monday and the second Monday of each month, with the holidays exceptions, but they'll be well broadcasted. First Monday, second Monday committee meetings, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. There's going to be two committee meetings, and that is the best way to engage with the board, engage with the decision-making process, information distribution, and have your questions answered. There's no better way than to come to committee meetings. And we're trying to make them regular, 5 o'clock at a reasonable hour, so that we can get parent participation. That's our goal.
Yeah. Do you want to use the Connect Ed? Because I think the Connect Ed thing is a really good, just to make that.
BJ, if I can answer that, and I don't think that I have ever not gotten an email that's been sent to me at Colonial School District. Mr. Bogley, they do not go to spam. What goes to spam are solicitations.
No, I've had, not true.
No, I'm not saying to administrators they go to spam, but school board, I know I've tried to email a new principal and it went to spam because she had to send me something first before I became okay to send to her. But I'm saying that our school district email, a lot goes to spam, but it's pretty generally alerts, solicitations to sell books or programs or whatever. But we've gotten some emails from people that don't even, just the other day, don't even belong in Colonial School District, Pennsylvania, and they still come through. So I believe I've gotten your emails.
I didn't know, but I just, I sort of wondered if you would prefer to get written, would you prefer emails?
Oh,
would
is
you
that,
prefer
okay,
to
that's
us?
what you mean.
Would you prefer people to come up to you after a meeting or before a meeting? What's your preferred method of communication? That was all I was asking.
Okay, in my opinion, any of those are fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I guess I was accused of not answering emails. I do try to get back to folks when they email me. Apologies if I did not. There may be certain circumstances where it's not appropriate for me as a board member to answer a particular question. I may refer you to the superintendent. I may forward your email to someone in the administration who's maybe the more appropriate person, or the board president, frankly, who might be the more appropriate person. So, for instance, a media inquiry comes in. I shouldn't be answering that as just a board member. It really, it should go through the normal processes, and I will forward that on. But members of the community should always feel free to reach out to us. We obviously serve as representatives of the community, and we want to hear people's concerns, both good, bad, ugly, whatever. I think that's really important.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Mark Epstein, and just have a couple of comments, maybe a few questions sprinkled in here. Mrs. Dow, you said we're confused. It's not us who are confused. You said it's well established all the candidates were qualified. I think my wife pointed out from their various websites, they're not all qualified. Mr. Romano, you said it's unacceptable that some of our policies are so old. If a policy is good, change isn't necessary just for the sake of change. But thank you, Mr. Romano, for telling us what this is really all about, which is changing policy. The elephant in the room is that there's a policy that you and the people that paid for your campaigns clearly need to change. And the current solicitor is either is fighting you or is expected to fight you on. And for whatever reason, you need to change it in the next 6 months. Because if it weren't for that, we wouldn't even be here today. So the question is, what is that policy? So you, the board, are on notice. We, the taxpayers and voters, will be watching every decision you make. And I implore you, the voters, to not forget what took place tonight. Find out next November and the November after that who's running and vote accordingly. We'll never put an end to this kind of behavior as long as people stay home or vote with a single button. Thank you.
I have to confess I'm a little bit, I'm Brian Daly from Plymouth County, a little bit nonplussed by hearing these seeming accusations about people paying for the campaigns of the school board candidates recently. I worked on those campaigns. I knew nothing about any financing. I made a modest contribution to the campaign through Act Blue, as I'm sure a lot of other people did. So, I don't think that any sort of entity, or it's like George Soros or someone was behind this. I think it was a grassroots campaign where people got out and worked their butts off to elect the 4 candidates. And I don't think it's appropriate to cast aspersions on people who actually worked through the political process and dedicated a lot of time. So, these are honorable people, and they're only working in the best interest of the community and the students. One other point I'd like to make, and this is just a question. There seems to be concern about the Rudolph firms not having any specialty in education law. And Mr. Shupak maybe could answer this, because I'm familiar with the RFP process on the public relations side, where if you are looking to engage an agency that doesn't have a proficiency in some discipline that you want to have covered, they will often bring in someone, as an addition to that practice in order to handle it. And I'm wondering, is there sort of some provision that the new law firm might undertake in that regard? I mean, I'm certain that there would be some financial considerations.
Well, they do have proficiency in education law. They serve as solicitor for a couple school districts, Norristown, which is right next door, and Pennsbury. But there obviously could be situations where we might want to engage another firm for specialized, for specialized matters. And the board has done does that with special education, and the board has done that in the past and could continue to do that depending on what the issue is and if we think it's appropriate and necessary.
We do that for special education now. We enlist Whistler Pearlstein for special education. Sweet Stevens, I beg your pardon, Sweet Stevens.
Hi, Chris Epstein again. First, I want to thank the board for generating interest in the goings-on of the school board. A lot of parents have come up and mentioned the December board meeting, and I'd like you to know that there have been over 1,800 hits on that video, and it's not because things are boring, obviously. So, and I also want to say, I am not against change at all. Change is good, as many members have said. However, change is only good if you go in the right direction. We, as a school district, don't have to go with a service provider that just because they have the lowest bid. We need to be going with a service provider who is the most experienced. You get what you pay for, and I'm really disappointed that that you guys made the decision that you did, because many people have mentioned the qualifications. Do you guys even know the nuances of educational law versus municipal law? Because a lot of the things that you've brought up today with respect to labor and unions, which is new to me, that's municipal law. Educational law, it's not student discipline and simple governance anymore. This is from a solicitor's website, okay? It has moved into school violence, drug testing, laws governing internet use, planned giving, complex financing arrangements, construction and capital projects, deferred compensation, and sophisticated labor and employment issues. So there's a lot of challenges here. And you talk about labor. The National Education Association is the country's largest union. And we have teachers here that are part of the educational union for Colonial, obviously. So we deal with contracts. Our current solicitor and the other top educational law firms in the state have lots of experience negotiating contracts with school teachers and administrators. So I have a couple of comments. One is to Mr. Shupak. To me, it doesn't matter the size of a law firm. I care about the experience, okay? Karen Burke, special education. Would we hire a phys ed teacher to be a special ed teacher in our district? Yes or no? Because of the qualifications. This is what we're talking about, the education of our students, not labor unions and contracts with other things, okay? So, you know, we don't hire employees that are not at the top of their game. Okay? He wasn't at the top of the list. There's reasons he wasn't at the top of the list, but we don't hire educators in our district who are not at the top of their game and are not the most qualified. Why are you doing it here? I don't understand that, okay? So, and what do unions have to do with giving our children the best education that they can get, okay? Other than our teachers in their union, okay? We are choosing an educational solicitor, not a municipal solicitor, not a family practice solicitor, an education solicitor that is best. Decisions are based on experience, knowing the laws that are currently in place, okay? This whole labor thing that you're bringing up and union thing is not educational. The policy changes that you want to bring, I don't know what they are, but again, it was said if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have hundreds of policies. Every organization has policies. If they need to be changed and they're brought to the board, we expect them to be changed, okay? The fact that a policy has not been changed over 16 years doesn't mean it needs to be changed. It may need to be reviewed, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be changed. I am really disappointed in the actions of this board tonight. I really am not seeing transparency here, but I also do want to ask that the taxpayers and the parents—
1 minute, please, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Show up at the committee meetings. Even Mr. Shupak said show up at the committee meetings. You will see what is coming down the pike at the committee meetings, especially the Terry's committee, okay? The upcoming projects with the high school, the middle school, the 4-5 school, curriculum, you know, come to those committee meetings. That's where you're going to see what's truly going on, and you can have a voice, because obviously our voices are going to the wall over here. Thank you.
I respect Ms. Epstein's comments since I was mentioned. I just, I want to say, echo what she said. Do come to the committee meetings. It's really important to do that. And just for the record, one thing I just want to correct. I mean, she said that that labor unions, union contracts, and municipal law. Most of our employees are members of various unions, including our teachers, who are really the heart and soul of this district. And so relationship with union members and with unions is very, very important in terms of what a solicitor does and in terms of education law.
I'd like to also add, Christine also brought up, Ms. Epstein also brought up other good point was that if a good policy is a good policy, it doesn't need to be changed, and that is correct. But when we talk about policies, there's a review of policies. They haven't been reviewed. So when a policy hasn't been even for updating or anything else to be addressed, they should be reviewed every 3 to 5 years as a standard practice.
Just so I could add on to that, having been through this, and I believe you were for the last 2 years, Felix, each cabinet member was asked to look over all the policies that related to their specialty and to bring forth those policies to the board that needed change very quickly. So that's where the 2 or 3 every month came from. There are policies in there that are antiquated and need to be thrown in the trash because they just don't exist anymore. Those were all handled pretty quickly. So it's not that these policies haven't been looked at, because I believe, am I right, Cabinet, you've all looked at policies? And that's where the direction came from the Cabinet to the Superintendent, who brought them to the board. So I just want to clarify that. There's still plenty of old ones.
There are lots of old ones,
plenty of old
which
ones,
are still
but I'm saying
not relevant
So being read is different than being reviewed.
No,
So there's a formal process for review.
without going through
Reading it, it's different.
PSBA, which our former superintendent didn't want to.
And which
whether
is a shame. I think it was
it would have been an easier way to go. But without going through PSBA, they have been looked at, and it's a slow, tedious process, which is why it will, without going through PSBA, never come to completion. This is the right way to go through PSBA.
My name is Erin Salino, and I spoke earlier. So, full disclosure, I'm a lawyer, but I'm a securities lawyer. I know absolutely nothing about educational law. I would never suppose to know anything about educational law, and I would expect that experts who specialize in educational law will be the people we go to. If you have a securities law issue, come to me. But I would not go and propose to know anything about something I don't know. So earlier, there was a lot of discussion about financial concerns. We discussed the $5 per hour. That was a difference. And then there was a lot of discussions about conflicts of interest, about hiring a firm or a solicitor knowing that they have conflicts of interest and knowing that you have projects that are upcoming where they'll have to recuse themselves. I just don't get it. I don't. I'm not stupid, even though I'm a lawyer. I don't get it. I don't. So I just can't see any type of business decision made knowing you're going to have to go hire outside counsel. And you're going to have to go through this whole process again to hire outside counsel to help on these projects. But you're saving $5 an hour. I don't get it. So, everyone out there, you're not stupid. I'm assuming that. Everybody can add. So I just want you guys to think about that. We're not dumb. Another thing, I'm a regulator. Regulate stock markets, option markets. Biggest thing we do is policies, procedures. First thing, I'm going to give you guys some free advice. Take the time to figure out what each position of every single person sitting here, what you are supposed to do and contribute. There was way too much discussion tonight. You probably, like half an hour at least. I don't know what the solicitor does. Well, isn't the solicitor's job to do this? I'm sorry, was that the board member's job to do that? You guys should know what you need to do. And if not, you have meetings. It's free advice. Sit there, figure out. Solicitor gives advice. Or we want a solicitor that's going to guide our policy. And by the way, we didn't elect the solicitor. You guys selected him. We voted for you. Therefore, you decide the policy. Your solicitor, is the one who says, yeah, you know what, it's kind of iffy, it's cutting edge, but I think we can do it. And I'll give you the supporting documentation, the cases, the research. That's what you have a solicitor. You don't have a solicitor to say, hey, we need this policy to say X, Y, and Z because I want to be cutting edge. It's not about that. It's about you. And if you can't make those types of decisions, you shouldn't be sitting here. So some of you have said you've been here for 16 years. I think Mr. Raimondo was at 7 years. I'm sorry, 2 years? 2 years. I know a bunch of you guys are new. But seriously, take the time to say, this is what each person's position is. This is what, is expected of us. I'll be honest, I went on the website. I read through every single policy and procedures. I emailed a couple of you. I got documents. I read them. I felt they were sorely lacking in descriptions of what you're supposed to do, how it's supposed to be done, certain timeliness. That puts you at risk because, one, you sit here with all of us questioning everything you're doing, and two, you spend hours upon hours arguing about what I'm supposed to do. And you really need to sit down and figure out structurally how we're going to go forward and what we need to do, and that's on you. Now, whatever solicitor you go forward with, if it is, I don't even remember his name, I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter who the solicitor is. It comes down to what you as a board are going to take responsibility for and what you're going to do to make sure, one, we don't get sued, and two, that our children get the best education we can out there. That's your responsibility. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's your mission statement. Make sure our children get the best education they can at the least risk and liability. So, take it for what it is, free advice, whatever. But remember, that is what is important, to know what your job is, to set forth goals, and to work towards them. Don't assign blame. Don't just, come up with reasons, oh, these policies. You know what? The policies are all on you, whether you've been here or not. That's a board decision. It's a board-guided principle. Has nothing to do with the solicitor, unless what you want to do is completely illegal, and he goes, hey, I really am going to recommend you don't do that. But it's on you. So, take it for what it is, and I hope you guys think about that. And going forward, I hope you also consider, all these people, everyone out there who's watching today.
Please wrap up.
Oh, sorry. They're watching you. Thank you.
I just want to add that I did not mean any ill will toward any phys ed teachers. I'm really sorry if I offended anybody.
Hello, I am Felix Armando, a junior at Plymouth White Marsh High School, and I am very happy with the outcome of this meeting today. And I would also like to add that some of the things that adults said tonight were very hypocritical, because a solicitor's job is to recommend. And from what I heard is that they're allowed to recommend something not to do, but they're not allowed to recommend something they can do. So, for example, the Rudolph firm said they had a very successful transgender policy in place in another school district. And coming here, they're not allowed to say, well, it worked here, I would like it worked there, I'd also like to work here. And that does not make sense, because you're saying they're not allowed to say something, but they're not allowed to support it. And they don't have a very important role, but they do have an important role. They don't have a very decisive role. But on another note, I would like to say that the architecture at the Plymouth White Marsh High School is very, very disappointing, and I think it should be better for the middle school. Thank you.
I'd like to just say thank you for all those comments. Mr. Sassy, I appreciate your comments as well. He called me out on calling names at the last meeting, and I just want to say that that was not my intention. My quote was to not be puppets, and I did not intend to name call anyone. I am not a name caller. I am not a bully. So for anybody who's disappointed in my behavior and anything that you've been seeing from the board over the last 2 months, I ask that you give us a chance. I think that the meeting tonight was very respectful. I think we had open dialogue. We asked questions. We listened to people's answers. I think I chimed in a little quick once, but generally speaking, we were respectful. And I ask all of you to give us a chance to prove to you that we will be able to come together and move forward, because we can't dwell on the past. A decision has been made. I can't wait to work with our new solicitor and see what wonderful progress we can make, because that's all that we can do is move forward. So I ask us to give us a chance. I ask my fellow board members to give me a chance and to give each other a chance. And next meeting you come to will be more smiles and less frustration and more progress. So thank you.
Well said, Kathy. And I would like to urge everyone again to get involved in the curriculum, instruction, grade configuration discussions we're about to have, because we really do value community input, and we're about to make some very big decisions. Thank you.
All right, hearing no other comments, hold on.
I'm just
One
curious, Eunice, you signed off on the campaign finance report dated, let's see here, 11/7/2017. How many other of these reports is your signature on? Do you recall?
There may be one other that has my signature.
Okay. Do you remember how much you all received in campaign donations?
On that one, I'm not off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it.
You'd have to look at it. Do you want to look at it?
So what's your question?
Mike, I want to make sure that that's your signature on the bottom. You assisted in preparing that report, and you're telling me that there's another report out there with your signature on it.
I believe there is one other that has my signature, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Or meeting's adjourned, excuse me. Meeting's adjourned.